Hello, I'm dialing in and live from Zurich. Hence, it's a very gray morning, so I've had to employ some extra lights. As we would say back in the Philippines, magandang umaga po, which is good morning, or sao shang hao, or salamat pagi, ohayou gozaimasu, and I wanted to thank you all for the privilege. The topic of today is a lot about courage or bravery, but perhaps I prefer the word courage because bravery sometimes has a connotation of fearlessness. I'm not sure that's realistic. I think many of us have fears, but many of us do things, plunge into things despite fear. And certainly the previous speaker, Rob Lowell, had a very dramatic, very cinematic depiction of how he has decided to plow on, to soldier on, despite the difficulties that he has faced. I think the context of today's sharing, I will share my reflections, my insights on the courage to humanize. There's a lot who say, let's humanize our brands or even our company or our business, but it has to start by humanizing the people across the table, the customers, the stakeholders, the consumers. But of course, it has to start with ourselves. Do we humanize ourselves, or do we switch on a game mode, a game face when we enter our organization, when we enter the premises of our work, or whether physically or virtually? And to my point about doing things despite fear, intimidation, or feeling unsure of yourselves, this is really about the courage that we need to employ, invoke, despite what many would say is, oh, this is best practice, you see, or this is how it's always been done here. Or perhaps more often, well, this is what the boss says. This is what the leaders say. This is senior opinion that I can't ignore. Or is it also courage despite what seems to be obvious, at least to you, and you may end up projecting your reality on others? So I've been going around various marketing fora, and I've been sharing my thoughts, my reflections, and to be quite honest, my provocations about humanized data-led creativity. And indeed, I'm the global vice president for Shell, for the Royal Dutch Shell Group. I'm also the chief executive of an independent marketing company within Shell, which is Shell Brands International. Hence, I'm in Zurich, but I'm really just the brand guy in Shell. And across many of our businesses, across many of the businesses I've been a part of, certainly in the nearly 20 years I spent at Unilever, handling brands like Dove, Tresemme, Toni & Guy, Sunsilk, Rexona, and Axe or Lynx back in the UK, I've handled lots of B2C businesses. When I joined Shell, I encountered more B2B businesses. But whether it's B2C or B2B or B2B2C, they're all really B2H, business to humans, or B4H, brands for humans. And there is a difference when it comes to buying the form and function of a product versus buying into what the brand of that product or the company behind that product stands for. It's a big difference. It's been said that the left brain may conclude, but it's truly the right brain, the irrational, emotional brain that decides. And of course, we spend a lot of time using the left brain to justify the decision was driven by our right brain, or what poets would say, the heart. And so when it comes to data, and because we're enabled by so much data, given the digitalization age, I'm often asked by fellow marketeers, or sometimes my creative partners, the ad agencies, does data really enable better creativity, or does it in fact limit imagination? I'm frankly perplexed by this question, because surely to a marketeer, to an advertiser, or to anyone who's advocating effective strategic communications, knowing more about your target audience or your target cohorts should help you, regardless of whether it's digital data or just deep immersion. And it's a blessing that marketers now have a wealth of data to work on. But we have to be careful, because humans surely cannot just be reduced to data signals, to bits of pixels and cookies. Humans are far more complex and nuanced to be simplified into such bits of data. What you may be signaling may not necessarily be what's going on in your mind. You could change your mind. Humans can also be very fickle. So I would submit to many of you, if not all of you, that there might be lots of big data, given social media, given our own first-party data, but there isn't enough deep data, truly profound data that explains things. And that's why I worry when a lot of my peers, a lot of experts I respect deeply and follow, sometimes argue that the modern marketeers of the 21st century need to be data scientists. I humbly disagree. I believe we need to be more of data alchemists, those that are inspired by the fictitious alchemists of the Middle Ages. It's about how we need to transform what we learn, dig deeper, and then convert them into not so much gold, but powerful propositions, powerful innovations, powerful ideas. A data alchemist looks for that human being that may be hidden or hidden beneath the data, which are just observations, patterns, trends. And the way I define a real insight, and note why I do qualify insight with the word real, is because I find that many of what people say are insights, what many people submit even in formal proposals as insights, truly are not insights. They're at best data points, observations, or as I referred to earlier, senior opinions that we need to dignify. Some are even fake. I see sometimes in many briefs that the insights were the wishful thinking of the briefing person, whether it's a brand manager, a strategic planner, anyone else involved in the project. And I look at them and go, surely no one really thinks like this. I mean, what is your basis for this? Or are you just trying to set up the proposition, the idea that you've already had, and trying to post-rationalize? Real insight is really the answer rather to the question why, that perhaps we should ask 5 to 7 times or however many times it takes until you get to the deep human psychological levers. Be very wary, of course, of parroting the insight. Once you've landed in the insight, that is not a license for you to actually advertise that insight. There is an old insult in advertising that still applies today, which is your briefs are showing. We're not supposed to just reveal the insight. We're supposed to unearth it, understand it, and then respond to it. When you understand why our target audience, customers, stakeholders want or need something, then you know how to address that, how to respond to that. Effective communication has never really been about simply message transfer, right? On the contrary, it's always been about stimulus response. Message transfer is, say you have a favorite comedian standing on stage before the audience, and he or she wants the audience to think that he or she is funny. But instead of cracking a really good joke, all the comedian says is, "I'm funny." Now, all of us know that's not funny. It's corny. But what an effective comedian does, stimulus response, is cracks a fantastic joke with a killer punchline, stimulus, and then we laugh our heads off. And if our thought bubbles could be read, it would say, wow, this comedian is bloody funny, right? Super funny. Response. But how many times do we, in business, in what we do, whatever role we have, say the equivalent of "I'm funny," or "I'm this country's #1 brand. We are the most effective. We are the closest to you. We care the most about you." Or even in personal lives, "I'm fashionable. I'm brave." Stop saying things. Message transfer. Stimulate the response that you seek to elicit. Better yet, be the response that you seek to elicit. And I'm inspired by the great and late Bill Bernbach, one of the true advertising gurus. And I paraphrase slightly what he did say, which is the real giants have always been poets or data alchemists. Those who jumped from facts into the realm of imagination and ideas. I don't think he's saying necessarily that you ignore facts, but use them as a springboard to plunge into the richer, more engaging, more effective world of imagination and ideas. Because the people you are trying to stimulate towards a response of either a think, feel, or do are humans. I'd love to think that that's what we've been trying to do for the campaign that's now 5 years old with Make the Future, with Shell, where when everybody else in the industry is zigging, we've decided to zag in depicting bright energy ideas in action which enable progress. How do we meet our target audience where they are? Such as an idea like the Great Travel Hack, which was our main campaign in the latter part of 2019. Let me show you a short clip.
Humans are meant to move around. That's what we do. But can we do it in a cleaner way? 2 teams, 3,000 miles, and only one rule. Go with the lowest CO2 emissions possible. Yes, we can move forward while thinking forward. This is the Great Travel Hack.
So for some of you who recognize Kaylee Cuoco from the Big Bang Theory, that was a campaign that we did in season 1 in the US, as she said, from LA to New York. And then we did season 2 in Europe, from London to Istanbul. Now, we could have just said, well, you know, we have this fuel, we have this energy type, it can go in this car. But we had to meet the audience where they were. We realized that we weren't really encountering anyone who wakes up each morning thinking, gee, I wonder where my fuel is going to come from today, or what kind of energy type should I be considering for my next vehicle purchase. That would be really boring. That would be rather constipated. And so what we had to do was, how do we unlock these strong, deep barriers to engaging with the topic? There are lots of strong opinions on what fuel should be like, how cleaner it should be. But for the most part, we were really struggling to engage more effectively. And one of the barriers is really just, you know, it's not something that you do think about unprompted. So we had to search for what is it in their lives that we could really associate the topic with. And we landed upon the topic of travel. But it couldn't just be a simple travelogue. And hence we came up with sort of this YouTube competition and a web series. We had to widen the aperture to their lives. If you pretend that the customer, the stakeholder, the consumer is merely that persona which you're trying to talk to 24/7, then you would be narrowing down so artificially the persona, when in fact the target person, the target audience, you know, would have many personas. How do we sometimes deny the fact that they are a very rich, multidimensional human being? And of course, technology today, there's a lot of data as well that you can use to keep iterating, to keep intervening. There's a lot of dynamic platforms where in real time, you know what's working, what's not, and you can intervene creatively, or even through the way you allocate funds for a campaign. Put more money in what's working. I get it. There's a lot of people who really are so amazed at how technology, digital media, social media is helping us with a lot of data, a lot of widgets, a lot of technical platforms. But it's not really that new. If you really think about it, social media is as old as human civilization. People sharing things with each other about their lives, their aspirations. It's even older than me. And this is me, 1972 in the Philippines, in my grandfather's house. And while it's easy to be infatuated with the latest technology stack and how you could create content for it, I would humbly submit that you should obsess instead about the humans at the heart of your business, at the heart of what it is that you're trying to achieve, because they will unlock the opportunities for better, bigger ideas, for more effective creativity. If you've somehow forgotten everything I've spoken about in the last 15 minutes, maybe 4 takeaways. The first is find the core insight. You sometimes land across on many insights, but there is one singular insight that really is akin to a question that one might ask, for which your answer, which could be a proposition, an idea, an innovation, a particular campaign, is the best answer. So it's the question for which your answer is the best. The second one is dare to be truly and compellingly differentiated. Remember one thing, it's intellectually impossible to be preferred, and I would hope that many of you want to be preferred over competitors or over other choices that you're offering. Otherwise, if you're not differentiated. I mean, for instance, I'm sure many of you have a special someone in your lives. Imagine yourself telling your special someone, honey, I prefer you over other people, but frankly, you're just the same as everybody else. That's not going to work out for you, because that doesn't compute. Surely you found something truly special about the person you choose to spend the rest of your life with. In my case, my wife was the most unique woman in the world for me. She's the only one who said yes. Number 3, brief with courage. Don't ask for what is expected. Don't ask your partners, your either agencies or other creative partners to second guess you. I end each briefing session with these 3 words: please scare me. And I mean it. Now, of course, it's not anything that scares me. It needs to be within the strategic parameters of the brief. It needs to make sense for the objective you're trying to achieve. But how often do we prescribe, perhaps sometimes even 80% of the brief as mandatory elements? How much room are we really asking our creative partners to navigate as a river, moving from left to right bank? And perhaps the last thing is, with a lot of data, a lot of big data, sometimes we obsess about personalization or customization. I don't think it's enough. The fact that you know what I ate for breakfast today or where I'm headed for a short break or the weekend does not really produce big ideas. Big ideas still require shared meaning, huge societal conversations. And that's what we try to do with the Shell Eco Marathon, a yearly competition of 10,000 students to design the most efficient vehicles. How Make the Future is also advocating some of our key messages about closing the gender gap in engineering. Simply put, the world needs more female engineers if we are to make the future of energy happen sooner. And how we are offering our employer value proposition. Come and join Shell. The future is yours to make. One of the first things I did when I joined Shell was, how do we humanize the company through the power of purpose, a sense of purpose? As humans, we all have a sense of purpose beyond, keeping ourselves alive as a living organism. And in the midst of the pandemic, as we were also addressing the short-term exigencies, as we still are, the company still remained focused on the long-term and declared its ambition to pursue a net zero emissions energy business by 2050 or sooner. I'd like to share with you 2 films that we just aired as my ending point. One in the UK and one in the Netherlands, which is in Dutch, but it has subtitles, which features the humans in Shell who do everything that they can do to bring about a cleaner energy future, whilst also intersecting with their own sense of personal journey and personal passions.
I was always into gadgets and gizmos from a very early age. I don't think I, as a child, sat there and thought, yeah, I'm going to be an engineer. What I do remember was always building things, taking them apart, and maybe that was an early sign of what was to come in the future. I work in the UK e-mobility team, supporting the delivery of the Future Fuels agenda. You have to be willing to adopt new technologies, new ways of doing things. There are people out there who want to move to cleaner energy, but they are worried that the network is just not available. It's options. By building a network, you give people options. Clearly, there's a responsibility to ensure that I do my bit to help create a better environment for the future generations.
Mafon's passion for technology is helping to build hundreds of new Shell recharge points in the UK.
Als kind wilde ik heel graag ballerina worden. Ik had nooit verwacht dat ik zo op mijn plek zou zijn in een technische wereld, in waterstof, in de energie. Ik vind het zo gaaf aan waterstof dat je met een techniek bezig bent die we voor de toekomst nodig hebben. Ik reis liefst niet met de auto, of het moet een waterstofauto zijn. Als mijn zoon een auto tekent, dan tekent hij hem voor de helft blauw, dat hij gevuld is met water.
Dit is het eerste Shell waterstofvulpunt in Nederland. Daar ben ik best wel trots op.
In waterstof moet je pionieren. Er is nog heel veel niet uitgewerkt, uitgedacht. Waar ik heel gelukkig van zou worden is als ik voor een wereld met minder uitstoot kan zorgen.
Samen met bevlogen mensen zoals Lisa bouwt Shell in Nederland waterstofstations.
For full disclosure, I did contribute a chapter to the latest marketing book published by Facebook in Europe. It's called Build Brilliant Brands, Advice from 22 of the world's leading marketeers. A full chapter on humanized data-led creativity. If you want a copy of a free ebook, you can download it from this URL. And as well, I mean, I'm very happy to take your views, converse with me. I do post a lot about brands, about leadership, about personal growth through my LinkedIn channel. And maraming salamat po. Sisi.